How is everyone doing today? How is Farming 40 so far? How many of you learned something new today? I feel like that should have been a little bit louder. So today we're talking about corporate power in agriculture, which is actually a very serious issue. And I have a quite incredible panel up here with me. Closest to me, I have Paul Sobocinski. I got it. Farmer in transition. He's also with the Minnesota Farmers Union Bottleneck Project. He is the project manager. Next to him, we have Stephanie Marinowski, Minnesota farmer and a former county commissioner. How many of you know who my next panelist is? She was about to release a new album at the end of the month, right? Yeah.
Another one?
Okay, so for those of you who aren't familiar with this, a handful of corporations control our food from farm to fork, allowing them to manipulate the marketplace, push down the prices paid to family farmers, and driving a lot of farmers, family farmers in particular, out of business. And I'm sure if you guys stop to think about some of the names you see at the grocery store, you might know what these corporations are called. We're going to talk today about how corporate power impacts the food you eat and how you can stand up against corporate consolidation.
All right.
So my first question is for Stephanie and Paul, who are farmers. From your perspective, how has corporate consolidation in agriculture affected the prices you receive and your ability to stay on your land? And there's a buzzword here that I think some of you may have heard called CAFOs that I think factor into this as well. So Stephanie, you were actually telling us about a pretty intense situation you're in right now because of corporate farming, so maybe we can start with you. It's on.
Okay. Well, thank you for allowing me to speak about our issue here. I live on the Minnesota side. I was a Wilkin County Commissioner for 20 years. And I have to tell you, I voted for a CAFO. I'm sorry. But at the time, I did a lot of investigating on this. We placed it in an area where there were not many farms. No one was in opposition to the project. And so it didn't seem to be a problem. Well, 10 years down the road, it is a problem now, and I'm terribly sorry that I voted that way. I have a situation where I'm living on the Minnesota side. I'm right next to the Red River of the North. Right across the river from me, a mile and a quarter away, is going to be a 12,500 head dairy operation. Now this dairy operation is going to be located very close to the Red River of the North that flows into Canada. This CAFO is going to be taking my water from Minnesota, because my water doesn't know if it's on the Minnesota or the North Dakota side. It's going to be taking my water, my neighbor's water, and there is no way I can get another well. This has happened to me once already, with a contamination from a large operation, our sugar beet processing plant, who took our water once, and we had to drill new wells. Mine is down 333 feet, and you know it's costly to drill wells. My neighbors all drilled wells. We did it once. Now, with a 12,500 head of cattle coming in, the amount of water they're going to be using on a daily basis is astronomical. Then just 60 miles north of that, there will be another dairy operation with 25,000 head. So the amount of water that they're going to be taking is astronomical. And not only that, we have to be concerned about our groundwater. It's a huge issue for all of us. Not just depleting it, but also the contamination. So that's my issue.
I think for some folks who are in the audience, they might not be super familiar with what the term is. So Paul, can you kind of help folks understand what is a CAFO? And I think that's going to help really elevate the seriousness of Stephanie's situation?
The CAFO very often is a very large facility in which the ownership is not by the farmers, it's by one large entity. The CAFO is a very large facility, very often in which one large entity is the owner. And typically, like in Minnesota, there's an entity called Riverview Dairy. They're very large, 5, 10,000, 20,000 cows concentrated in one spot, have been owned by that entity. And so what really the pictures happen in Minnesota is we're seeing the livestock industry being stripped from the independent farmers. No longer is the independent hog farmer supposed to be raising the hogs, it's the large entities. Now, there's various entities in the hog industry. Some are not as bad as the others. But the typical piece is ownership. Ownership by that entity in which the farmer might put up a confinement unit, but he doesn't own the livestock. So they lose that independence, the ability to be an entrepreneur. And all the power sits on the corporation side. It's the same thing that happened in the poultry industry, where you tighten down, tighter and tighter. Basically what happened in 1998, the pork producers, the largest pork producers, went to Washington, D.C., had enough power with the checkoff issue and worked against the independent farmers. And they drove the hog price down to 7, 8 cents a pound, worse than the Depression of the 1930s that my grandfather experienced. That's what happened to us on our farms. Now what did we do? We fought back. Campaign for Family Farms, Iowa CCI, Land Stewardship Project, Reserve Oil Prices, organized and fought back, and still fighting back today. So that's what we're facing when we're facing a large CAFO. The real piece is we have to look at how do we do pieces to keep independent farmers on the land. So I've been part of Nyman Ranch. Like I said, I'm in transition, just stopped raising hogs a year ago, where we do have independent markets. But the largest hog producers are pushing against it right now in Washington, D.C. With a hog project they called Save the VTAC. Now it's called Save the Bacon Piece. They want to undermine Proposition 12, in which California voters said we want to have some standards. Some standards as it relates to cages and birds, some standards as it relates to crates and raising hogs. And so the object is that's what we're dealing with. The power of the corporation against the independent farmer.
What is
Question from the audience?
What does CAFO stand for? CAFO? Is that what it is?
Concentrated Animal Feeding Unit.
Okay, thank you.
So one thing that I learned a couple of farm aides ago about CAFOs, and I think, Stephanie, this is some of what you're dealing with, they put so much livestock on such a small amount of land that it actually becomes a huge resource drain. So it takes, for instance, a lot of water to operate a CAFO, but then it also creates a toxic wasteland because of how much manure, for instance, cattle are releasing in a single day. So a CAFO can essentially create wasteland because once that land is used up, it can't be used for planting crops because it's just too toxic to do anything. So not only is it a really serious threat financially to family farmers, and not only are they very powerful, but they also actually have a really huge climate impact as well, which is, if you're in Stephanie's case, really concerning. And actually most of us should be worried because most of those rivers ultimately will flow into the water supplies that we get in our suburbs and our cities as well.
Absolutely, and I have seen it happen down at a CAFO by Campbell, Minnesota. They say now that you cannot raise any soybeans on that soil. So it's changing the landscape. It's changing our efforts to grow the food we want to grow, the crops we want to grow. So here we are, we're going to have to try and find other crops to grow. What are we going to do? When you ruin that soil, you ruin it. And to put these large operations in one spot is just ludicrous.
So, Jesse, a lot of your music speaks to corporate power and social justice. Why do you think it's important to connect these farm and worker struggles to to a broader audience through art and storytelling? And we have a very broad audience here today. Why is that so important?
Just the more aware that we are of the issue. I think a lot of us go through life without even being aware that this is the status quo for farmers right now. All right, you run into the store, you get what you need, you get out, and you don't realize that everything in your cart is owned by about 2 companies. You know, the entire aisle, all those products, it's just 1 or 2 companies. And when you have such a corporate takeover, they have no interest in the longevity of the land, and they're not incentivized to have any because they're not passing the land down to their families or anything like that. They're passing it on to the next CEO to take the next big check, and it becomes all about the money of it. There's an ethical question too, like as far as like how happy, and I don't want to sound silly, but how happy is that cow? That
Yeah.
And then do you want an unhappy cow's milk? No. No, it's sad milk.
Feel it.
Give me that happy milk. So,
You guys can clap for Happy Milk.
when the farms, go back to the farmers, they have incentive to take care of the land, to pass it on to the people in their family, their friends, their neighbors even. Okay? Happier cows,
Happier.
you eat the happy food, you become happier, it's not full of stressed out hormones and stuff like that. There's a spiritual component to it. There's gotta be. I don't know the inner workings there, but there's gotta be.
I thought, yes, definitely.
Yeah, I have to tell you that. I mean, this just feels so good because I've been through those dairy barns. I've seen the wonderful CAFOs. I've seen these baby calves taken away from their mothers right away. They don't get that connection. Now, we have feeder cattle. We don't have a lot, but we have feeder cows. And it's important for us to see that that calf makes it. It's very important for us to see that we have happy cows. We spread out our corn stalks in a pasture. And I'm telling you, these cows are happy. They get excited. They start kicking their feet up. These cows that are raised in these confined areas, they don't get that opportunity. They never land on the grass. They're never out in the open. It's sad. And when he's talking about happy cows, I know about happy cows.
Is it true? Since we're talking about happy cows, I have a question for you, Paul. But is it true that cows make best friends, like that they pair up with each other? That's true.
Oh, that's very true. Oh, yes, they're buddies. Sometimes, and I have seen a mother cow that will kind of like babysit the others while the other mothers are off doing things. Yeah, it's true. It happens.
So, going back to what you said, happy cows.
A happy cow. I want a well-connected, happy cow. And pigs is smarter than cows, so they gotta,
I'm sure
they have existential turmoil.
So, all hope is not lost, right, Paul? There are things that you've been doing, there are things that are happening in Minnesota that are pushing back against the corporate consolidation of farms and farming that are helping protect family farmers from those corporate interests. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Sure. One of the pieces that we've been doing, so I work with it's called the Minnesota Farmers Union Bottleneck Project. Minnesota Farmers are our fiscal sponsor, so a group of us, about 4 of us, raise the money for that. What we do is we connect with small processors across the state of Minnesota, looking at how the next generation of processors, how they can have succession, how to include new people to be entrepreneurs in meat processing, just like new people to be family farmers. And one of the pieces we're doing is connecting, for example, the immigrant population, the opportunity to be entrepreneurs. So what can you do? It's to stand up and support immigrants. If we look back in our background, the Native Americans were the first people here. There was blacks captured and brought here. But we also know that a lot of us also have a history. Farmers Union, Land Stewardship Project, IATP. Pay membership dues, support, get active, be involved. Also, when you're buying food, go to the farmer's market. Go to a family farmer, do direct market purchases, bypass the other system. We have to start creating our own system, part of the fight back, besides fighting the corporate monopolies. The other part is be real clear to our congressional people that we need to support family farmers, that the effort that's going on in D.C. right now to knock down Proposition 12, where California voters have said, look, we want to have something to say about how the food is raised and animals are cared for. They're now calling it the EATS Act, and now they just changed it to the bacon thing. Well, as a Diamond Ranch hog farmer, I just stopped doing that, and I've done it for 20 years. That's a market that we built. That's a market built that people there are saying, I want to buy on the value of how those animals are treated. Antibiotic free. Let people have these choices. I'm not going to fight everything else about the corporate hog system, other than to say is, we deserve our place at the table too, and you shouldn't be using those dollars against it.
What is your perspective on this? You are a former county commissioner, so help folks understand a little bit that there are things happening at the national level, of course, but there are also things happening at the local level, right?
Absolutely, and this is why I'm wearing a North Dakota t-shirt. Normally I wouldn't do that because I'm from Minnesota. But anyway.
She made that very clear earlier.
But I went to my North Dakota neighbors, and they're suffering just as I am on this situation. And we got together with the Dakota Resource Council. And thank you very much, Sam, for helping us. There they are. They're awesome people. And I can tell you with their help, they have helped our small community, the little town of Abercrombie, North Dakota, a very historical site with Fort Abercrombie. It's a beautiful place. And together, we are working together. We are working hard on trying to push the environmental laws and to put pressure on the state of North Dakota to look at what they're doing. The product that this dairy is raising is not even staying in their state. It's going to be moving into Minnesota. They're going to be utilizing the roads. And as a county commissioner, I can tell you it's not cheap to keep these roads up. And think of all the hauling and everything else that's going on. And I see in North Dakota, it's a very different type of legislature over there. Minnesota, it's a little bit different. We, as the county commissioners, had something to say about these dairies. Over in North Dakota, the township does a permitting, and they're all volunteer people. They're people like you and I are. They're not getting paid for this position. They're just local people. And they were thrown this dairy in their lap. It sounded like a good deal. They promised them lots of things. They're going to give Abercrombie money for their local fire department. That sounds good, doesn't it? They're supposed to be bringing jobs into our area. Doesn't happen, I can tell you. And they promise all kinds of things, and it just doesn't happen. What they're doing to the community is terrible. But in North Dakota, the county commissioner said, we don't have anything to say about this because it's all in the state's hands. So it goes to the state to decide on what is going to happen in our area. That to me is crazy. These people don't live where I live. They don't see what's happening. They haven't come out to see this dairy and what it's going to look like. Who is going to be watching them during their construction process? The environmental laws, I will tell you, in North Dakota are very lax. Minnesota, we're a little more stringent. I asked my Minnesota pollution control and Minnesota DNR what they would do if this CAFO was coming into our area. And they said they would have an environmental study done before this project could be there. There is no environmental study being done on this project before it's being constructed. They're under construction as I speak.
One aspect to bring up in Minnesota right now, and we've fought to keep it for the last 20 years, it's called local control. The rights of townships, the rights of counties, the rights of city to do land use planning. And that's been under attack over and over again. And so that in Minnesota, it's important to tell your legislator to stand up and keep that. It's also important to tell your congressional people, like what I just got done saying with Proposition 12, if they take that out, they want to undermine states' rights, the state's ability, and the counties and the townships' right to have a say. So that's important pieces to do. But I think one of the most important pieces is to start voting with your dollar. Start voting with that dollar bill you got. Support farmers markets. Think about how you go together with a neighbor and buy a part of a hog or part of a beef. Support that industry, that growing industry. You'll find in Land Stewardship Project Farmers Union, new farmers entering, merging farmers. Those are the people that you need to start supporting. Rebuild our infrastructure, entrepreneurs. Now, one example of the corporate power we face up against, and we have to work right here with the University of Minnesota. Do you notice what it says up on the stadium? Huntington Stadium, should be Memorial Stadium. It's Minnesota's taxpayers into that stadium, but we got a bank that's buying part of that stadium. We got the same thing with Best Buy. It's the same damn thing. That's corporate control. They're trying to maneuver the public money, your money. That's what we got to start standing up to. And we have to start on Congress. We got to start telling the support funding for sustainable and organic agriculture, for things like the Minnesota Institute for Sustainable Agriculture, not to cut it like the university now has it in the budget, because we're the small dog. That's slated to be cut. So we all are doing, a lot of groups that are here today, part of Farm Aid, are pushing back on that and in dialogue with the university to get that restored.
Nice.
So that's what's going to be done. Organize, stand with your neighbor, vote with your dollar.
We have a lot of people. What's something you would encourage this audience to do? Because you all are at Farm Aid, which started because there was a farmer crisis. So what's something that you would encourage everybody to do today?
I'd like to underscore what Paul said. You gotta vote with your. Y'all voted, right? How's it going? We don't send our best. We don't send our brightest up there. Okay? You have to be insane to want to go up there to DC in the first place. Okay? By the time they've written something up, sent it down to you all to vote on, they've already decided. Okay? You have to vote with your dollar and cut off the systems. Cut it off at the head.
There's one more thing I would like to say about that. When I went to become a county commissioner, I knew nothing about being a county commissioner. I didn't even know what it was. But you know what? You have to step out of your comfort zone, and we need to have people like you out there volunteering, trying to get on local town boards, your city council, your school boards. We need good people in there, and that you guys out here are the good people that we need in those positions. Don't be afraid to take it. Step out of your comfort zone. And I have to encourage young women, please. Most of these boards, gals, many times I would be the only woman in the room. But I'm telling you, we need women on these boards. We have compassion. We look at things maybe differently than men do. And we need to make it more of an equal playing field. So please don't be afraid to try.
To end on what Jesse said, we all have a lot of power with our dollar, and I think that collectively we can make a huge difference. And I hope all of you have learned something today at Farm A. Let's give our panelists another round of applause for joining us today. If you are a farmer who is just getting started at 4:30 against the grain is doing a podcast recording where they're going to talk to farmers about some of the things that they can do to get started, I hope you can join them. And for those of us up here, thank you so much. Enjoy farming.